The woman behind the front desk froze, not just paused, froze, like someone pressed pause on her breath, her blink, even the tiny tremble in her fingers. Mara Jacobs set her suitcase down and waited, frowning. Her clothes were damp from the road drizzle clinging to the ends of her sleeves, dirt wringing her sneakers. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and something older underneath it, like worn-out carpets and buried stories. The motel was nothing special, just a roadside blink between exits, 2 floors, 16 rooms, a vending machine that probably didn't work, and the kind of lighting that made everyone look like a suspect. But it was cheap, and Mara had cash. She tried again. One night, non-smoking, whatever's furthest from the ice machine. The woman behind the desk blinked once, then twice, then whispered, "You're already here." Mara tilted her head. "Excuse me? I mean—" The woman glanced down at the ledger, then quickly slammed it shut. "Sorry, long shift. I meant to say we have a room. Yes, room 6, around the corner." But her hands trembled as she passed over the key. A real key, not a card. And Mara noticed it didn't have a number, just a tarnished silver tag, the edges worn smooth. Outside, the rain had stopped. The lot was half empty, puddles glowing with the reflection of a buzzing neon vacancy sign. A cat darted between cars. The air smelled metallic, like wet gravel, and something faintly citrus. Room 6 was on the end. No other doors nearby. The wall light above it flickered like a bad memory. Mara unlocked it, stepped in, and stopped. The air was warm. Too warm. Not like an empty room, like someone had just left. The lights were off, curtains drawn. A half-full glass of water sat on the nightstand. A book her favorite author lay open, spine cracked, a receipt tucked inside. She took a step closer. The suitcase on the bed wasn't hers, but the jacket hanging on the back of the chair, identical to the one she'd lost last winter. And the photo on the dresser? Her, at age 7. Standing in a schoolyard she didn't remember, holding a balloon she couldn't place. Her name was on the back, in her mother's handwriting. Mara's heart slammed once, hard, against her ribs. She backed toward the door, tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. Not locked. Just stiff, like the frame was warped or the room wanted her inside. She turned and caught her reflection in the mirror. Except for a second, it wasn't her. Same face, different eyes, wider, sharper, and wearing a necklace Mara hadn't seen in years. She stumbled back, blinked. Now the mirror just showed her, pale, shaking, confused. She turned slowly and noticed something else. The suitcase on the bed, it had a tag. A flight stub from 2 days ago. Destination, this town. Passenger, Mara Jacobs. Her handwriting. But she hadn't flown. She hadn't been on a plane in 3 years. The walls pulsed around her, quiet but dense, like the air had something to say and was holding its breath to keep from screaming. From outside the window, a voice called softly, "I thought you'd be back sooner." Mara froze. The voice was a woman's, and it sounded just like hers. Mara didn't scream, It wasn't courage. It was the kind of stillness that comes from shock, deep enough to drown thought. Her hand gripped the edge of the dresser. The wood felt real, solid, but everything else, the photo, the suitcase, the voice, unhooked her from reality, one thread at a time. She moved to the window carefully, each step soft, like she was afraid to startle something watching her. The blinds were thin, cheap plastic. She lifted one slat with a trembling finger. No one was there. Just a row of wet cars and a swaying security light. The cat from before was licking its paw on the curb. She let the blind fall back into place, the plastic snapping against the glass like a warning. The room was silent now. Too silent. No hum from the fridge, no creak from the ceiling. Even the air conditioner, one of those clunky wall units, stood dead, though the light on its dial blinked green. Mara backed away from the window and sat down, stiffly, on the corner of the bed. She could still hear the words. "I thought you'd be back sooner." The voice hadn't come from inside her head. It had been filtered, faint, like someone outside the room. Someone who knew her, or worse, thought they did. Her eyes found the suitcase again. Same size, same faded leather she remembered from her college trips. She bent forward and unzipped it. Clothes, familiar. A yellow sweater with a small tear in the left cuff, one she'd donated 2 years ago. A book of poetry she lost in a move. A pair of shoes she swore had been stolen from her gym locker. Everything fit. Too well. At the bottom, a journal. Black cover. Plain. No title. She opened it. Inside, writing in her own handwriting. Pages of it. But the entries were dated last week, and the words described things she had never done. The woman at the front desk keeps staring at me like she knows what I did. I saw her again today, same eyes, same walk. I think she's trying to copy me. If I disappear, it's because she took it all back. Mara dropped the journal. It hit the floor with a muffled thud, a knock. She jumped. 3 soft raps, not forceful, but slow, intentional. She moved toward the door, every instinct screaming to run, though she had no idea where. No peephole. "Hey, who is it?" she called, her voice thinner than she meant. No answer. Another knock. This time just one. She hesitated, then opened it. It was the woman from the front desk. Her expression was wrong, tighter, less startled than earlier, like she'd moved from confusion to something darker, fear maybe, or guilt. "I need to speak with you," she said. Mara opened the door wider, but said nothing. The woman stepped inside and closed it behind her. She looked around the room, then pointed at the suitcase. "Don't touch anything else." Mara folded her arms. Too late. The woman nodded, once sharply, as if that confirmed something she'd already suspected. "I worked in a hospital once," she said. "A long time ago. Maternity ward." Mara's mouth went dry. "What does that have to do with—" "I held you," she interrupted, "right after you were born." The room contracted. The light above flickered once, then steadied. I remember your face, the woman whispered. I remember your mother's voice. But no one said there were two. Mara didn't speak, because suddenly she wasn't sure she'd ever been the only one either. Mara stood frozen, staring at the woman as if she'd said something indecent or impossible, and maybe both. "You held me?" she repeated, though the words didn't feel like hers. The woman nodded slowly. Her name tag read Margaret, but Mara noticed for the first time it was crooked and the plastic was cracked, like it had been dropped too many times. "In a clinic on the west edge of town. Not the big hospital. A private one. We don't even deliver anymore." Margaret's voice had lost the stiffness it had earlier. She looked tired now, deep tired, the kind people carry in their bones, not their eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" Mara asked. "What does any of this have to do with what's in that suitcase or—" She hesitated. "The photo? The journal? That voice?" Margaret sighed and walked slowly to the dresser, placing one hand gently on it. She didn't look at Mara. "Because this isn't the first time someone with your face has come here." Mara's stomach turned. "What do you mean?" Margaret finally looked at her, and her eyes were full of something dangerous, not malice, but certainty. There was a girl, same build, same hairline, same everything. She checked into room 6 4 months ago, stayed one night, left before dawn. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later, when I saw her again. But in the paper, Mara's skin prickled. Margaret moved toward the nightstand, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folded clipping from a newspaper. She handed it to Mara without a word. It was a short article, local, poorly written. "Woman found unconscious near old train depot. No ID." There was a photo, blurred but unmistakable. Her face, eyes closed, blood at the hairline. "This woman was never claimed," Margaret said. "She survived, but no one came, no name, no record. She was taken in by a state facility. After a while, she left, and then she came back," Mara finished. "Didn't she?" Margaret didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and held out a phone. It wasn't Mara's. It was cracked, the back covered in the same rabbit sticker as the one Mara used to have years ago. "I found this in room 6 last week. I keep meaning to turn it in, but when you walked in tonight, I couldn't. I thought maybe it was you again." "It wasn't," Mara whispered. "Wasn't it?" Margaret's question hovered like static. Then she turned and walked to the door. "You need to leave this room," she said. "I'll give you another one." "I want to know what this is," Mara snapped. Margaret turned back, her voice sharper now. "I don't think you do." "I'm not hallucinating." "No, you're remembering." Mara stepped toward her. "What's that supposed to mean?" But Margaret just opened the door and said again, this time quieter, "Leave this room." Then she stepped into the hallway and shut the door behind her. And for several minutes, Mara stood alone again, except now the silence wasn't just still, it was watching her. And she was starting to think it knew her name better than she did. Mara didn't leave. Not right away. She stood in the center of room 6, watching the shadow of Margaret's footsteps fade beneath the crack in the door, and something in her tightened, not out of fear, but defiance. She turned to the dresser. The photo of her 7-year-old self still sat on top, but now that she looked closer, it wasn't the only one. There were more, tucked between a stack of old motel brochures and a warped coaster. All of them featured a girl with Mara's face, but in different places, different years, hairstyles that didn't match her own memories, a mole she never had, a scar on the left temple. Her breath caught. In one of the photos, the girl was standing next to someone else, a second girl, a few inches taller, smiling with a hand around her shoulders. Same face. But mirrored. Her, not her. They were wearing matching sweaters. One of them had her arm raised in a wave. The other looked cornered. A date was scribbled on the back, March 19th, 2002. Mara would have been 12. She didn't remember this picture, or that girl. She opened the journal again, flipping through the pages with increasing urgency. Every word felt like a trap, like a thread that once pulled would unravel everything she thought she was. Then she found it, a single line underlined in blue pen. They chose her because she was quieter. Her throat closed. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Suddenly, her own memories felt like rooms she hadn't entered in years. And now, all the doors were opening at once. She remembered a yellow dress, not hers. A birthday cake with 2 candles, not one. A hospital hallway, 2 cribs, 2 names on one sheet. Then nothing for years. The fragments didn't form a picture, not yet, but they scratched at her like something long buried under thin soil. There was a knock. Not the door this time. The window. Mara turned, heart hammering. Someone stood outside, in the dark. The streetlight cast just enough glow to outline a figure, slim, still, hoodie pulled low. She couldn't make out the face. The person raised a hand, not in greeting, but in mimicry. They touched their cheek, the left where Mara had just scratched an old freckle nervously minutes ago. Then the figure pointed to the door and vanished. Mara stood, grabbed the journal, the photos, and the cracked phone, and finally opened the door. But the hallway wasn't empty. A girl stood there. Not Margaret. Someone younger. Same build. Same jawline. Same hair, only shorter. And a scar just above her left eyebrow. She smiled faintly. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. Mara stared at her. "I don't think you are either." The girl didn't blink. Then, "I'm not here to hurt you, but I need you to listen." Mara tightened her grip on the journal. "Who are you?" The girl hesitated, then took a single step closer. "My name is Eliza," she said, and Mara suddenly felt very cold. Because that was the name her mother had once whispered in a hospital room, right before falling asleep when she thought Mara wasn't listening. And when Mara had asked her about it years later, her mother had said, "That name was never meant for you." Mara stared at the girl in the hallway. Eliza. The name dropped like a pin in a soundless room, and everything inside her rearranged itself around a memory, disbelief, dread. Same eyes, same chin, same way of standing like she didn't trust the floor. "You're not real," Mara said quietly, but her voice broke at the end. Eliza didn't flinch. "I've been real longer than you think. Just not where you were looking." The hallway flickered, the overhead light humming like it was about to give out. Somewhere, a door slammed in the distance. It echoed too long, like this place was built from hollow spaces and paper-thin secrets. Mara stepped out, closing the door to room 6 behind her. "Start talking," she said. "Now." Eliza glanced over her shoulder. "Not here." They moved quickly out through the side exit, past the back vending machines, down a gravel path that led toward the field behind the motel. The wet grass soaked their shoes. The sky was still heavy with stormlight, though the rain had held for now. They stopped under a broken street lamp that barely threw light. Eliza sat on the edge of a rusted bench and gestured for Mara to do the same. "I found you 3 years ago," Eliza said. "You were tagged in an alumni post. Smiling? Wearing blue? I knew your face, Mara. I knew it better than my own, because I'd been trying to prove you existed since I was 12. Mara shook her head. "This doesn't make sense." "No, it won't. Not yet." "Start from the beginning." Eliza's mouth twisted. "I would, if I had one." Mara waited. Then Eliza reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small, laminated. A birth certificate. 2 names, 2 times. Mara Lynn Jacobs, 5:18 a.m. Eliza May Jacobs, 5:21 a.m. "Twins," Mara whispered. Eliza nodded. "They separated us right after. My file says I was born with complications. My mother said they told her I died during transport, but I didn't. I was taken in by a state-run pediatric care center. I didn't have a name for the first 4 months." Mara stared at the document. "But why would they do that?" "Different father, different paperwork, different decisions." Eliza's voice had gone dull, not bitter, practiced, like she'd said it too many times to still feel it. "They gave you the life, the name, the memory. I got a file and a rotating roster of foster homes." Mara gripped the edge of the bench. "Why come here now?" Eliza met her eyes. "Because you came here first." Mara's brow furrowed. 4 months ago," Eliza said, "you were here. This motel, room 6. You checked in, used your name, your ID. You walked into that room and then something changed." Mara opened her mouth but had no words. "I followed you," Eliza said. "I wasn't ready to speak then. I just wanted to see what you had, what I never did." "And now?" Eliza looked away. "Now, I think someone's trying to make sure one of us doesn't leave this town." Mara's skin prickled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Eliza said slowly, "that the woman who checked you in tonight, Margaret, used to work at the clinic where we were born. I know. She was the one who marked the files. She was the one who labeled one of us unclaimed." and she's been keeping track of both of us ever since." The silence stretched. "What do you want from me?" Mara asked finally. Eliza stood. "I want the truth. I want to know why she let me disappear. And I think you do, too." Then she turned and walked toward the edge of the lot, toward the back entrance to the motel. Mara sat frozen on the bench, the birth certificate still trembling in her hands. And in her mind, her mother's voice whispered again, "That name was never meant for you." Mara didn't go back to room 6. She waited until Eliza disappeared behind the corner of the building, then crossed the lot and entered the front office instead. The fluorescent light inside buzzed slightly, and the lemon-scented cleaner had faded into something older, a faint trace of rubbing alcohol and talcum powder, like a hospital trying to forget it was ever a hospital. Margaret sat behind the desk again, as if she'd never left. Her cardigan was draped neatly over the back of her chair, her glasses resting low on her nose. A half-solved crossword lay on the counter. She wasn't writing. She was watching Mara walk in. "You didn't leave," she said. Not a question. "No," Mara replied, "but I have a few." Margaret sighed like she'd been waiting for this. She reached under the desk, pulled open a drawer, and lifted out a manila folder held together with 2 cracked rubber bands. She placed it on the counter between them. "You should sit." Mara didn't. She opened the folder slowly. Inside were 3 documents, 2 birth certificates identical to the one Eliza had shown her, and 1 state transfer record. No names, just ID numbers, hospital codes, and a list of dates that made Mara's chest tighten. "What is this?" she whispered. Margaret looked at her over the rims of her glasses. "Proof." "Of what?" Margaret leaned back in her chair. Her voice was flat now, professional, detached. "Your mother gave birth to twins, different fathers, complications. One child had an allergic reaction, medical panic. In the shuffle, someone filled out 2 discharge forms for the same infant. You were taken home. The other infant, Eliza, was kept for observation." Mara's mouth was dry. "They never told her?" Margaret hesitated. "We were going to, but by the time it was caught, she'd moved. The system filed Eliza as abandoned. They didn't investigate further." "That's not a mistake," Mara said. "That's theft." "I agree," Margaret said quietly. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because when I realized what happened," Margaret said, "I was 24. I'd been on the job 2 months. I wasn't brave. I wasn't even supposed to be reading the files." She paused. "And then later, it was too late. The clinic shut down. Records disappeared. And I thought—" her voice trailed off. "I thought I'd never see either of you again." Mara stared down at the folder. Then she looked up. "You've seen her, though, Eliza." Margaret nodded. "Twice. Once when she checked in. Once when she'd left something for you." "For me?" Margaret reached into another drawer and pulled out a small brown envelope. It had Mara's name written on it in sharp, angular handwriting. She opened it. Inside, a photograph. 2 little girls, maybe 6 years old, seated on a bench in matching dresses, one with a missing tooth, one with a bruise on her arm, on the back. We were both there. You just didn't know. Mara's fingers curled around the edges of the photo. Her voice dropped. How did she get this? Margaret didn't answer, but Mara could tell she already knew. She turned toward the door, then stopped. Where did she go? She has the other room now, Margaret said. Room 7. She asked for it by number. Mara hesitated, then walked outside, folder still in hand. The sun was starting to rise, bleeding orange and pink across the rooftop edges. The lot was quiet, except for a low hum from the vending machine. A bird pecked at a candy wrapper near the curb. She reached room 7, lifted her hand, and knocked. Once, then again. No answer. She pressed her ear to the door. Then a whisper. Did you come to remember or to take it back? It wasn't Eliza's voice. It was hers, and it was coming from inside. Mara's hand dropped from the door. Oh, her legs wanted to run, but her voice had come from the other side of the wall, calm, imitated perfectly, not like a recording, not even like a memory. Like a mirror that had learned to speak back. She pressed her palm against the wood, half expecting it to be warm, but the surface was cool, still, as if whatever spoke wasn't bound by the same physics Mara had lived in all her life. She tried the knob. It turned easily. The room inside was identical to hers. Same curtains, same peeling floral wallpaper, same humming wall unit, but colder, dimmer. The bed was unmade, the lights off, and in the center of the bed sat a suitcase. Not hers. But it had the same scuff on the corner, the same initials. MJ. She stepped closer, and then she saw the girl. Not Eliza. Herself. Sitting in the chair by the window. Leg crossed. Chin resting on one palm. Watching. Mara's breath caught. Her whole body froze. It wasn't a mirror. Not this time. It was flesh. Or close enough. Same clothes. Same scar on the wrist from that camping trip in middle school. Same chip in her front tooth. But the eyes, they were darker. Still. Too still. The girl tilted her head. You found her, she said. The other one. Mara swallowed hard. Who are you? I'm the piece that stayed, the girl replied. The one they tried to split. You got the name. She got the silence, and I... She touched her chest lightly. Got the weight. Mara took a shaky step back. This isn't real. That's what everyone says, right before it is. She tried to move, but her feet wouldn't cooperate. The girl stood, same height, same frame, but older somehow, not in years, but in knowledge, like she'd been watching longer than she should have. You forgot, the girl said. You forgot what she looked like. You forgot what your mother said. You forgot the hallway and the second crib and the name she whispered before the nurse came back. Mara's throat clenched. What do you want? Nothing, the girl said. Not anymore. She's here now, so I can go. And just like that, she was gone. No flicker. No sound. Just the chair. Empty. And Mara, shaking, alone in a room that still smelled like her shampoo. She didn't leave right away. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands curled into her lap. Her breath came slow, controlled, but inside everything spun. Then a knock, soft, tentative. Eliza. Mara opened the door, and for a moment neither said anything. Then Eliza stepped in, her eyes scanning the empty room. "You saw it," she said. "Her." Eliza nodded. "She comes when you're almost ready. Then she waits to see if you're brave enough to become her." Mara met her gaze. "Did you?" Eliza shook her head. "Not yet." Then, "But I think you just did." Mara sat back down, looked at the suitcase again. Her fingers found the zipper, but she didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she reached for the photo in her pocket, the one from Margaret. "We were both there," she murmured. Eliza stepped beside her. "We still are," she said. The sun had risen fully by the time they left the room. Together. And neither one looked back. Because whatever had happened inside in room 6, room 7, the hospital years ago, it was still living, but it didn't get to speak first anymore. That belonged to them. 3 days later, the motel sign flickered out. Margaret stood by the office window with a half-packed box of paper records and a stapler that no longer worked. She didn't wave when the car pulled out of the lot, just nodded once, as if acknowledging the end of something that had unraveled a long time ago. In the passenger seat, Eliza slept with her head against the window. Mara drove. They didn't speak much. There wasn't need. They passed the old depot where the unconscious girl had been found, the pharmacy where Margaret once worked, the gravel road that led to the clinic, now shuttered and hollow behind chained gates. They didn't stop. Not until they reached the city line, where a gas station sold postcards and cheap phone chargers, and a woman behind the counter asked, "Names for the receipt?" Mara hesitated, then smiled. "Eliza Jacobs," she said, nodding toward the other girl, "and—" a pause. "Maisie." It wasn't a name she'd used before, but it tasted right, like something grown, not given. They moved into a walk-up above a hardware store 3 towns over. It smelled like dust and old wood glue. The window stuck halfway open. The hot water ran inconsistent, but it was theirs. Eliza got a job shelving books at a second-hand shop. Maisie Mara started volunteering at the records office, filing papers, digging through old hospital logs, looking for names that had slipped through cracks the way hers once had. And when she found one, she wrote it down, pinned it to a corkboard above her desk. She didn't search to fix what was broken. She searched to witness it, to say, "I see you. You were here. You counted." Sometimes she still dreamed of room 6. The mirror, the voice, the empty suitcase. But in the dream now, she was the one sitting in the chair, and someone else younger, frightened, still on the edge, opened the door. She didn't speak. She just waited, so the girl could find the name that had always been waiting underneath, and walk out with it. On her own. She hadn't gone back to reclaim what was stolen. She had built what came next. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose who you are when no one gave you permission to be. Which part of the story stayed with you the longest? Have you ever had to choose who you are instead of being told? Share your thoughts below. Your voice might be the one someone else is waiting for.